The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of NAMI New Hampshire or the organization's funders. All individuals and personal experiences are different. Please connect with your primary care provider or a mental health professional to seek advice regarding any condition you may experience. NAMI New Hampshire does not endorse or advise specific treatments. For 24/7 crisis help, contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text NAMI to the crisis text line at 741-741 or call 911.
It's time we talked about it. I'm getting tired of living without it. The things in my life just don't make any sense. Each day I wake in the morning, but every day just feels so boring. I don't understand just what I need to change. It's up to you to want to do the things you want to do. And though it's temporary, feeling sad can be so scary. I love the ones who understand me. I never want to feel so angry. I never want to feel like this again.
Welcome to the 603 Stories Podcast, a monthly mental health podcast made by young adults for young adults, where we share stories, make connections, and find hope. Any ads throughout this podcast are not associated with 603 Stories or the 603 Stories Podcast. There will be sensitive subjects discussed during this podcast. Should you need them, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255, or you can text the crisis text line by texting 741-741.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 603 Stories Podcast, a mental health podcast made by young adults for young adults. I'm Jace, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'll be one of your hosts for this episode.
Hi, I'm Sam. My pronouns are he, him, and I'll be your other host. Before we dive into our topic of how legislation impacts our mental health, part 2, I would just like to remind all of our listeners that Jace and I are not mental health professionals. We are simply two young adults who are passionate about mental health and enjoy sharing these important discussions with you.
We would also like to remind today's listeners that, like mental illness and suicide, NAMI New Hampshire is nonpartisan. We support policies that help people with mental health conditions and their families, and collaborate with diverse stakeholders on shared goals to improve the lives of individuals affected by mental illness and suicide. So with that being said, let's jump right in and meet our guest for today's episode. Welcome, Senator Jeanne Shaheen. Let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about yourself.
I started out as a teacher right out of college. I taught at Dover High School, and then I taught again in Mississippi. The first year they integrated all the schools in Mississippi. And it was at that point that I really got interested in Jimmy Carter, because he became governor of Georgia and said it was time to end segregation in the South, which was very different than what I was hearing from elected officials in Mississippi. So that's how I got involved in Jimmy Carter's campaign and started working in politics in New Hampshire when he started running for president. I have 3 daughters and 7 grandchildren. My youngest grandson started high school today at Oyster River. So a big day.
Congratulations.
All of them are either in high school or college at this point. So they've grown up way too fast.
Very good. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that, like, what your personal investment in mental wellness is?
You know, I think for me, as for so many other people, during COVID, we realized just how deep the challenges are with addressing mental health. And I probably got my first lesson when I was in the state Senate, when I worked with NAMI to help pass the first legislation in the country to try and provide parity for mental health coverage along with other insurance. And we actually did it in New Hampshire before they did it at the federal level. And we tried to tell the insurance companies they had to provide coverage for 8 biologically based mental illnesses. And that was for me a real recognition of the challenges that we face. And it has gotten reinforced with the opioid epidemic, because so much of what we have seen with the opioid challenge has been people who have turned to substances because they also have mental health concerns. And then, of course, during COVID, we've seen a real increase in mental health issues because people have been isolated. They, for a period of time, may have been reluctant to go to a doctor or a counselor, to be out with people in groups. And
Right.
it's had a real impact. So I think thinking about how we can better address mental health and recognize that mental health, just like our physical health, is critical in order for people to feel good about their lives, to have strong relationships, to be able to enjoy what they do.
That's really fantastic work. That's what we're all about here.
I have, as I said, in that first legislation that I sponsored and worked with NAMI, I saw what a difference NAMI makes in New Hampshire.
Oh, we really appreciate that. We're wondering if you could touch a little bit on maybe personal connection, personal meaning you have to your work on mental wellness.
Well, again, as I said, it's been about thinking about my perspective in public policy and what we can do to ensure that we provide that mental wellness for everybody, and how do we do that from a policy perspective. And as an individual, I recognize that my own mental health is really important, and sometimes when things get overwhelming, you have to take a break, you have to step back, take time off, think about talking to people. All of that is really important.
Absolutely.
I recently saw a really wonderful video about your grandson, I believe, AJ, and the video spoke about how he balanced his mental wellness and starting his own business at a young age. Do you feel like his journey has played a part in your mental health advocacy? And what about him or his journey do you find inspiring or uplifting, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, AJ has dyslexia, and as a child in elementary school, he went through a very difficult time, as I think any kids do who are in any way different from their peers. And learning to read, learning to navigate in school was really challenging because of that dyslexia. And I think one of the things that helped him address it, in addition to we were able to put him into some special schools that helped him think about what strategies can address dyslexia. But he also got interested in making jewelry and has a real art with being able to create. And I think that helped him to recognize that he had a lot of talents that may not be exactly what all of his friends had, but are very valuable. And again, I think that's one of the things that we need to encourage, particularly young people, to think about, is what are their unique talents that make them who they are, and how can we encourage those?
Yeah, I love how individuality can foster a sense of value, like self-value, and can help improve mental wellness in its own respect, because by recognizing the things that you care about and the value that you place upon yourself, you start to care about yourself in ways that you may not have thought about before.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think it's actually a perfect segue in talking about fostering the potential of youth, to maybe talk a little bit about your work with the mental health excellence in schools. Could you talk to us about that a little bit, maybe starting with what the ACT is for our listeners who may not be aware?
Yes, as we know, we have a shortage of mental health professionals. We don't have enough people who are training. Often there are impediments. Cost is often an impediment as people are thinking about what kind of field they want to go into. And so what my bill is designed to address is to try and help deal with the cost and encourage young people to think about mental health fields. In schools, the national standard is that we should have one mental health professional for every 500 students. Right now, it's over twice that. We have one mental health professionals where we have them
Wow.
for about every 1,100 students. So thinking about how do we expand those people working in the field was something that I thought was really critical. And in talking to the experts, they agreed with that. And so what my bill would do is to ask the Secretary of Education at the federal level to work with colleges and universities to come up with a program that would provide, that would help with the cost of going to school and to be a mental health counselor. So the state or the federal government would ante up a portion of the tuition, and the university would do that as well. So it has bipartisan support, which I'm pleased about, and I'm hopeful that we can help move this bill as we're thinking about the range of things that we need to do to address mental wellness, particularly among young people. The other thing that Congress did last year was to pass the Safer Communities Act, which provided $2 billion for states to help with mental health. And that is a critical piece. The focus of that legislation, as your listeners may remember, was in response to the shooting in Uvalde and all of the school shootings that we've had. And the legislation was the first legislation in over 30 years to address gun safety. And a big piece of it is that $2 billion that's supposed to go to look at what we can do in communities to improve mental wellness.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, especially, expanding those services in schools is crucial, because we know that, when we make healthy kids, we make healthy adults. And I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. The other thing I worked on this year, as we're going through the appropriations process, I serve on the appropriations committee. And one of the things that I heard from my granddaughter, and we have also had calls to our office about, is the fact that when the COVID emergency ended, you may remember that during COVID, if you were, you could get work through telehealth with a mental health professional.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, when that emergency ended and the law went back into place, it said that if you go away to college and your mental health counselor is in a different state because the counselor or the psychologist is still in your home state, then you can no longer have that telehealth relationship. And that's created a real challenge for a lot of young people, because that relationship, as we know, is really important as we're thinking about what we need to do to address mental wellness. So we got legislation in one of the appropriations bills to direct the federal government to fix that piece so that young people who go off to college can still maintain that relationship with their counselor.
So can you talk to us a little bit about your experience talking to students at Bedford High School about the Mental Health Excellence in Schools Act, hearing about their thoughts and sort of why it's so important to speak to those directly impacted by the acts and bills that you're working on?
Yeah, I had a really good meeting with students at Bedford where they have a program that they told me is one of a kind in the state of New Hampshire, where they start in the younger grades, the students who participate mentor younger kids, and they deal with different challenges around decision-making and mental wellness. They talk about substance use disorders. They talk about suicide prevention. They talk about other mental health challenges that young people face. That smoking and vaping is one of the things that they also talk about. And it was really impressive to hear from the students that I met with how they feel like they're making a difference and how that has helped them as they have been faced with challenges in school and in life in making decisions and in trying to maintain their mental wellness. I also had a really good meeting that NAMI joined me for down at Dover High over a year ago. And what I heard there is the same thing that I heard in Bedford, really. And that is that what they try and do is be a resource. So not engage in counseling or try and provide answers for students, but to try and help their friends and anyone that they recognized as having mental health challenges, to try and connect them with resources for people who could help them. So with NAMI and with the school counselor and with other people. And I was very impressed by that and by the commitment that both student groups had to thinking about how they could help their fellow students and how they could ensure that anyone who was having difficulties got to the right place to get help.
That's very moving. I think that's one of the things that's most important to us is thinking about how we can encourage and empower youth to really take care of themselves and take care of each other and get involved in their communities. I think related to that, why do you think young adults should really be trying to be active participants in local legislation, in their community government, things such as that?
You know, I obviously, as somebody who has been involved in politics for a very long time, think it's really important for young people to get engaged because it affects your future. But
Right.
I would also say it's not just about getting involved with legislation and politics. If it's also about giving back to your communities, getting involved in service. All of that is important, and it gives. I think it gives a feeling of self-worth when you see that you can make a difference for somebody. And as I think about the young people who I've had a chance to work with in my Senate career or when I was governor, one of the things that I hear from them and still hear from them regularly is that they want to work in my office, work in government, work in politics because they want to make a difference. They want to make the world a better place. They want to improve the lives of other people. And I think there's no higher calling than that. And for young people to be able to feel that way because they participate in their communities, or whether they get to participate in some other charitable organization or service organization, it all helps contribute to that feeling that you're making a difference in the world and that you're part of something that's bigger than you are.
I love that philosophy, the philosophy that if we all give back, we'll all be providing so much for each other and really finding meaning and positive change you can make, not just for yourself, but for others.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big supporter of things like AmeriCorps, the AmeriCorps program, and City
Right.
Year, and the Peace Corps, because it's all that kind of service and seeing how you can make a difference in your communities and in the world.
Yeah, that absolutely. Those are fantastic programs, and the people who take part in them should be very honored.
Absolutely. And we should all be appreciative of what it takes for people to contribute in that way.
So as we start to reach the end of our time today, wanted to ask if there was one thing you wanted our listeners to walk away with today, what would that be?
Well, first of all, it would be to pick up on what we were just talking about. It would be to say, I hope they'll get involved in something that they're excited about, participate in their community, whether that community is their town, their school, their university, their job site, whatever it is, get involved and think about how you can contribute to that. But also as you're thinking about how to take care of your own mental health and maintain mental wellness, don't be afraid to ask for help and to reach out to other people. And if you have a concern, remember you're not alone, that there are a lot of people who want to be helpful. It's just a matter of reaching out and finding out where the best place is and who can provide that help.
That's really the key. It takes a village to do anything. And we really need to learn to lean on each other, but also provide for each other. And that's, I think, part of what we're doing here and what you're doing all the time. And we really just want to thank you for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule to try and talk to youth about the progress we're making in the state. And we really just want to thank you for all you do.
I really appreciate the opportunity and think that Sam, you and Jace are really doing a service by doing these kinds of interviews and letting people know what to be thinking about and where to go if they need to talk to somebody or need help. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It means the world.
So let's take a minute to talk about some of the takeaways that we got from this episode. Sam, do you want to start?
Yeah, this was a really refreshing conversation to be able to speak directly to someone that does this work in Washington. I feel like it can be really hard to sort of see the full picture of everything going on, not only in our state, but in our country. And that can be very overwhelming, being like right up close against the issue and not being able to get perspective on it. So it's really amazing to hear directly from the people doing the work. It instills a certain sense of hope when you realize you're talking to an actual person who's doing the work and not just this vague person in the distance. So it was just really refreshing to be able to hear directly from Senator Shaheen.
Yeah, so true. And what I found really interesting was the conversation that we had on how community engagement on any level is important and can help people of really every age, not just young adults, but can help all of us develop and or improve our sense of self, which in turn can help us improve our mental wellness as a whole. And policy and advocacy are just one of the many ways to do this. And especially when it comes to policy and advocacy, taking part in these community efforts can really have a direct impact on our future and the culture that we live in. And so it was really interesting to see not only what's happening in Washington, but also to see the importance of our efforts on a grassroots level, because the work that we put in really does pay off. And just having Senator Shaheen on with us today has been absolutely incredible, because it shows that our representatives and the people in Washington that are making these bills and passing these acts really do listen to us and make time to make sure that they are representing us in the best way they know how.
Absolutely. That connection between us and our officials and that feeling of, actual agency and being able to reach out to them and make change is so important.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to say thank you again to Senator Shaheen for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and sharing your insights. And we wish you the best of luck with your future legislative efforts.
And as always, thank you to our listeners. Your engagement with this podcast gives us the ability to continue sharing stories like these from our community. If you liked today's episode, consider sharing it on social media. And if you're interested in more 603 Stories content, visit us at 603stories.org or on Instagram by searching at 603 Stories.
Thanks for listening to the 603 Stories podcast, a monthly podcast made by young adults for young adults. You can check out 603 Stories on Facebook or Instagram, or at our website, 603stories.org. Just a reminder, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline can be reached at 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-TALK. And the crisis text line can be reached by texting to 741-741. Remember, you can make connections, get help, and find hope through 603 Stories.